After nearly 5 months of investigation, the New York Attorney General said today that Governor Andrew Cuomo did sexually harass 11 women and broke state and federal laws in the process.
Governor Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, many of whom were young women, by engaging in unwanted groping, kisses, hugging, and by making inappropriate comments. And Governor Cuomo's administration fostered a toxic workplace that enabled harassment and created a hostile work environment where staffers did not feel comfortable coming forward with complaints. None of this would have been illuminated if not for the heroic women who came forward. I believe them. And I thank them for their bravery.
The Attorney General also said her work here is done and she does not plan to bring any criminal charges. Of course, for his part, Governor Cuomo went on TV a few hours later to once again deny all the allegations.
I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. The facts are much different than what has been portrayed. And for those who are using this moment to score political points or seek publicity or personal gain, I say they actually discredit the legitimate sexual harassment victims that the law was designed to protect.
Part of our next guest's term as governor of Massachusetts overlapped Cuomo's in New York. Deval Patrick is now co-chair of the new Future of Tech Commission, which will advise the White House, Congress, and other federal leaders. Deval Patrick, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Jim. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. What should happen to Andrew Cuomo?
Well, he's got to make that decision. Obviously, maybe it's not obvious. I want him to succeed, but these are very, very serious charges and from a very credible source after what appears to have been a credible investigation. So I think there does have to be a reckoning. If my opinion counts for anything, he'll take these allegations seriously and not dismiss them out of hand. And he and his political team and the other Democratic leaders in New York will help sort out what the next step should be for him and for the office of the governor.
What would taking them seriously mean if it were not resignation?
Well, I think I'm sure things short of resignation. I think that the most important thing is to acknowledge that the women who made these accusations, which are now more than accusations, they've been investigated and acknowledged by another constitutional officer after study. He's got to acknowledge that those are true feelings that people have, whether he intended to cause those feelings or not. They are feelings and experiences that people have had, that women have had, and they have to be treated respectfully. And I think they have to be believed. Again, whether he intended to cause those reactions or not.
If relevant district attorneys, including in Albany and New York State prosecutors, believe what they read in Letitia James' report, is there any reason the governor should not be criminally prosecuted?
I don't know what the criminal laws are in New York, but I think he may well be exposed to civil liability. That's a different question, of course, than what you asked.
Can we move from one horror show to another, COVID in this case? I mentioned a minute ago that obviously you're co-chairing this tech commission. I assume one of the issues you're addressing is the proliferation of misinformation. As recently as a few weeks ago, the president, for a moment at least, said that Facebook was killing people. What's your take on this issue and what should be done about it?
You know, this is a real live and current example of many that we have heard about in the dozen or more town halls we've done around the country, a couple in Europe, the conversations we've had with leaders in the industry, from the biggest companies to the small ones, to academics and advocates and so on. The amount and proliferation of misinformation and how it gets amplified, that's a separate but very important component of all this, is a serious issue from a public health context, and as you mentioned in COVID right now, to right up to and including the preservation of our democracy. And I think there are ways in which, and we've been gathering lots of ideas about how to address this, not just in terms of the consequences, but how to prevent it from proliferating in the first place. And we're working our way through those.
You know, one of the things that people talk a lot about is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which is essentially, for those who don't know, a liability shield for big tech, that they can't be held liable for what users post on their platforms. Candidate Joe Biden told the New York Times editorial board in the most emphatic terms, I was reading the interview today, the 230 should be revoked, which raises a lot of concerns in terms of free speech believers. Where are you on that?
Well, we're working our way through that. As you can imagine, we've heard that from all sorts of folks, from all sorts of political backgrounds. Interestingly, I think some of the opinion we have gathered, not just from the industry, is whether making tech platforms or social media platforms liable for the misinformation that other people place on their platforms actually gets at the problem. The problem may not be just the misinformation. That's its own issue, Jim. I don't mean to diminish it, but it's the amplification of that information through the algorithms that are sometimes used by some of the social media platforms, and understanding what those are and how they kick in and why they kick in has been a big part of my own education in this.
Let's talk also about something I'm sure you're addressing, is access or lack of access in underserved communities. Let me quote you to you, if I may. You were governor 10 years ago when you said expanding broadband internet access to underserved communities is as important to the economy as investing in schools, roads, and bridges. The $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure plan addresses, to a degree, all of those things, including $65 billion, I think it is, for expansion of broadband access. Does that thoroughly address the digital divide issues that you've been talking about for a long time?
It depends. It really depends. And the reason I hedge when I say that is because the issues are not the same in every place, meaning rural communities and the access issues that folks in, who live a distance from each other in parts of the West or Middle West, or frankly, even in Western Massachusetts, are not the same access issues that poor people in urban communities face. There are also access issues, but access is sometimes the availability of the basic service. In other cases, it's the affordability of the service, and just what that service should be in different locations will vary as well in terms of what the adaptability of technology can be or will be. So we're trying to sort that out as well. I'll tell you, I think the basic premise, to go back to your quoting me to me, is still that, and something that all of us working on this share, which is that now access to high-speed internet is not a luxury, right? It's not about entertainment. It's about, or not about entertainment alone. It's about education and healthcare and commerce and your ability to participate in the larger civic and economic life of your community and of the country and of the world. So that has to be how we think about not just the desirability, but the criticality of access.
When will the report come out of this group you're co-chairing?
In the fall. We're probably, less than a couple months away. We've got a lot of work to do to get to consensus yet.
Can we move to something you've been involved in throughout your career, voting rights? People watching, I'm sure, know the Supreme Court decision in the Arizona case, a ruling that 2 voting restrictions, in particular in Arizona law, had limited, I don't know if limited was the word, but they essentially said limited impact on minorities was their concept. We all know that the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act appear stalled in the Congress. How serious, what does this mean for and a lot of people believe the Supreme Court was sending a message to other states to say, go for it, you can get away with what Arizona's doing too. So what's this mean for the future of democracy? And is there an antidote if Congress can't get its act together?
Well, I think you're right to ask what this means, because, and by this, I would take it up a notch, if you will, because I think the question before us is, do we mean to have a participatory democracy? You know, does this notion of government of, by, and for the people really mean anything at all? And we've confronted that question at different times in our history, and I think we are confronting it in as profound a way right now. And I'll leave aside the partisan jabs. You know, the notion that the Republicans, I think, have decided that they can't win a fair fight, and so they have to jigger the system and engineer outcomes in order to be competitive. It's beyond that at this point.
How so? What does that mean? It's beyond that. What is that? How's it beyond that?
Because it's really, the question today is, are we going to have a contest of ideas or just a contest of tactics? Mm-hmm. And what you see in states is blatant, by the way, in many states, who would not have been able to do this but for the Supreme Court's decision in 2013 gutting the portion of the Voting Rights Act that required they get pre-approval before doing it. And in that decision, the court said, well, we don't need that pre-approval. We don't need that system anymore because times have changed. And not 15 minutes after that decision did states go back to the same gamesmanship, modernized in some cases, but motivated by the same reasons.
By the way, and for those who don't know, the John Lewis Act would in fact reverse that decision from the Supreme Court and written by John Roberts. But is there an antidote? You didn't answer that part of the question. If Congress doesn't act, what is it?
I think there are a couple of antidotes. I don't think this fight is over by any means. First of all, there is movement in the Congress. It's never fast enough or far enough for my taste, but there is movement, and there's some encouragement that we're hearing from the work in the House in response to signals that Senator Manchin has been sending. I do think we're going to have to confront the question of the filibuster rule, and it's well timed to do that. Meanwhile, we got to organize at the grassroots. We have to overwhelm the obstacles that are being put up in front of people. And by the way, these obstacles have a particular and a particularly insidious impact on Black and brown voters, but they have an impact on all voters, especially voters who are poor, especially voters who live in rural communities or who don't participate often. And the issue goes so much further, Jim, than the question of ID, right? There is some form of identification required in every one of the 50 states already. The question is things like, being able to overturn a vote that has been certified by independent electors if a Republican legislature decides, you know what, we just would rather have a different outcome. That's a very dangerous very dangerous undermining of our democratic principles.
So before you go away, are you going to Barack Obama's 60th birthday party on the Vineyard? Yes or no?
Yes, I guess so. We've gotten our tests and all that.
You're going to wear a mask, I hope?
I'm going to do, it is harder to get into this party than it was to get into the White House. There are so many layers of care taken. And I think that the public health circumstances demand just that.
Enjoy the weekend. Deval Patrick, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jim. Take care.